Funny. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to week number 57, open Q&A, where we will talk about some failing grades and what is going on in one of my current classes. This is also the time where I will take your questions that you guys go ahead and submit to me each and every week and do my best to answer them for you. So thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I look forward to answering your questions as well as helping you along. So I see you, Lemonade and Barath and Glacked Up, Ethan, Charles, Alexa, Forever Thoughtful, Danny, and Abigail. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in tonight. And I know that, with COVID been going on, like failing classes is kind of something that, I don't know. I don't know if it's something that, to be expected or like, how we should adjust. But I mean, I know it's inevitable no matter what, right? I mean, there's always going to be classes that, for a teacher or a student that, it's just not going to be the right fit, and that could be due to COVID or due not to COVID. So let me know if you are currently failing a class and if you think it's due to COVID or just really maybe you're not in the wrong class or you have a bad teacher, whatever may be the case. But, a lot of you responded back to my community post that I put on my channel. But yeah, I'm going to talk to you guys about my students that are failing, why they're failing, and, kind of let you know some of the things that I'm doing to not only help students, but then also what are some other things that you can do. So let me know if you are kind of in that situation as well in your own classes here inside of the chat. And falling behind, I can definitely kind of see that. I can see cheating definitely going on as well. It's the COVID, online virtual instruction. I know a lot of students are, as vaccines are starting to get rolled out, at least in the United States, I know a lot of the virtual or going back into person has been a big thing since the beginning of the year. But yeah, still, the what we've kind of done for the first half of the year, I don't know if that's as prepared students as well as what they need to. So, but I'm glad, Vivian, that I could be in a clutch for you when you need. And crush to get my calc assignment done. Yeah, definitely. I get a lot of students that, are putting things off until the end, Melinda, and getting them in right as they need to. And, that's one of the things too. It's like, one thing as a teacher that I've done this year has been extremely more forgiving with my students. And, because I think it's very important, even for your teachers, you don't know everybody's situation and you don't know what people are going through. And I think it's always important to bring that into perspective, how you are responding and talking to people. Even once we start to sometimes relax and get into the groove of back into schooling, everybody's been impacted differently with COVID and the virtual instruction and learning. And it's been very difficult. A lot of people have had to go through a lot. And even though they might be showing up in your classroom or they're teaching your class, you don't know the whole story. And so I think it's always important for that. And that's one thing that I've always kept in my mind, even though I teach a lot of classes where I have to remain the rigor, or I want to keep the rigor as much as possible to give students what they should expect from the class. I also have to be understanding as a teacher and, know that this is not a normal year for students. And a lot of the portions where I want to push students, I got to have a little bit more understanding and a little bit more empathy from on that. So yeah, we'll talk about cheating. That's not why students are failing and stuff like that. But I'll definitely get into some things that I've allowed with my students. So one thing I think that COVID I've definitely relaxed a lot on is timelines and stuff like that with my students. A lot of times I've never really been a big, like, you have to have your homework done on this date and this hour and timestamp stuff. And, I always wanted students to learn. And if overall, if they were learning, then I was happy with that. And so I was never a big timeline kind of thing, teacher, but I didn't want students just to procrastinate and not get things done. So I do realize that is important. You do have to let students know when things are expected to be done and to push them forward with that. But I would definitely say with COVID, I even relaxed it a lot. I'm like, I just want you to, if you can just keep on moving, getting things into me, I'm going to be happy. This is not something that I really want to be pushing in front of that. And, some other things I've also been doing is just, helping students with, redoing a lot of work, when they do be failing quizzes or tests or getting questions wrong, giving them more ample opportunities to fix those mistakes. But let's talk about why some of my students are failing and, what are some things that I see with this? And there's really kind of two things that come up with that I wanted to kind of bring up to you guys when I was talking or thinking about this live stream. And, one of it was I wrote down analytic trigonometry, but it's really the same thing with analytic trigonometry and pre-calculus, because there's something that was really big. And even though I teach algebra 2 and geometry, what I'm about to say does not really relate as much to them. And I think you guys might, relate to this. I know as my students. Well, thank you very much, my love. I very much do appreciate this super chat. And yes, it is my birthday as well. So I do appreciate that. And I didn't want to do a happy birthday live stream, though. I felt that was going to be boring and bland. So I want to talk about failing math because I figured you guys would maybe take a little bit more away from that than a happy birthday from there. But I do appreciate that. So the point that I wanted to make with the analytic trigonometry as well as the pre-calculus is, and kind of bringing into like this faking it. And I don't really mean students are faking it to like trying to deceive, myself or the teacher or whatever else. But I think we do a lot of mathematics that we learn for the test, right? Or we learn for the course just to get by. And I think it's very important for us to understand that, especially in mathematics, we see a lot of this stuff comes back. And one of the things that the problem with pre-calculus, a lot of students that when they struggle in my course, it's with that pre-calculus, it's very obvious that they don't have the foundational skills that they need. And that happens with calculus and other math courses as well, when they do not have that foundational skills. And it doesn't mean like they didn't do well or they didn't, can't answer the questions. Not so much answer the questions, but they can't, they're not capable of doing the work. It's just that they learned it to basically understand it for, that given class or that given test, but they really don't have that foundational of explanation or understanding of the content that they need to be able to expand upon it. And thank you so much, Alexa. I very much appreciate that. I am very, very happy for that. Thank you so much. And that's very true with pre-calculus. We get in pre-calculus students like, oh, I've had A's and B's before or anything. But then they forgot a lot of this stuff. And it's very difficult for them to, pre-calculus, a lot of times people call it like algebra 2 plus or algebra 3 with some trig, and intro into calculus. And yeah, a lot of it is like a rebuild of stuff they've already learned. But if they can't build upon that, or they don't have any knowledge of those previous concepts, it becomes a very difficult course and very confusing and stressful and difficult to kind of move forward with. And so I bring that up with the analytic trigonometry because I've had a lot of students that have been doing fairly well up to this year. And this is why, legitimately students are failing my course that were not failing before. And I really think this is important for students to understand. I had a lot of students that were doing very well throughout this year. Obviously, like I said, I've been very, I wouldn't say lenient. I mean, I have been much more lenient than I've, previously been, but, a lot more forgiving, a lot trying to do whatever I can. And Sophia, thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate that. Thank you. But I've been doing a lot of things, I think, to help students out, and if students needed it or not, it didn't matter. This is the year that I know students need that help and support from me as a teacher. But then we get into this analytic trigonometry and students are like, oh, I'm struggling here. And, one of the things that comes up with analytic trigonometry is it expects you to remember your algebra that we learned in the year. It expects you to remember your trig and all the things we previously learned. So if students did okay with it, but maybe they didn't really, maybe they were just happy with getting by or getting whatever grade they got, but they really didn't press themselves or challenge themselves, then they came into this chapter and they're like, whoa, this is a lot. And it didn't matter what I did as far as helping them, all the examples I provided, students struggled and, they bombed quizzes, bombed the test. There's students that did well, of course, but yeah, overall chapter 5, this last test that we did, students became, failing. And so a couple things I want to let you guys know that I'm moving forward, with that and to help students with this as well. And as far as you, if this happens to you, what are some things that you need to do? I think one thing, as far as from the student perspective, I think to always look into yourself as far as challenging yourself. If a lot of times students are happy with the status quo of what's going on in class, like, hey, I understand what I'm doing. I can do my homework, or I did okay on the quiz. Well, and that might be fine. And if that's what you're just planning on doing is passing a class and getting there, like, great. But if you're ever taking a class where you need to build upon it, or this is just like a stepping stone, I really would recommend that, go above, do more than what the teacher is asking you. Make sure you're challenging yourself, asking yourself those questions to really get into a deeper understanding of the content that you need to learn. And because it's really going to be come into, if you're just learning things for the next test, it's not going to stick. And you really want to make sure that you can have a understanding of why things are being connected within the content. And sometimes everything makes sense from how the teacher prepares the course and has you go through it, but that's not always going to be the case. And you're just going to want to make sure that you have a firm understanding. And I think one of those things is asking some of those challenge questions to yourself. Why, asking those why, like, why is this the case? Why does it work like that? And looking into some extension problems from there. And so as far as a teacher, some other things that I'm just looking into doing is I'm going to continue spiraling reviewing. And, I told students from now that we're in the second semester, I'm not concerned that they struggled with this content. It was difficult content. But one thing I told them is, we're going to keep on coming back to this. We're not going to just give up on it just because you struggled with it and it was hard. Like, we're going to keep on coming back. And I think that's something that I always try to do as a teacher, is to keep on going back to previous material that we learned and just reminding students, trying to keep it fresh. Because I think this year compared to last year, we're going to be taking final exams, and how fair or unfair that is. I think that's something that is, I don't think in our school or our district, they are canceling any exams. And that's maybe a live stream for another live stream topic we can go through. But I think as far as just the reality, hey, I got to do my best to prepare you. And so what I'm going to do is we're just going to keep on coming up for this stuff. And you know what? The thing I want you to know and other students to know is it's okay if things don't stick. It's okay if you don't understand things initially when they're taught. Sometimes, and especially this topic, I've taught analytic trigonometry for many years. A lot of times it's just something that you need to see more than like in 2 weeks. You need to see this for a couple months. And then finally you're like, oh, now I get it. Like, now I understand how this connects, and like, that's perfectly fine. So don't be so hard on yourself. If you are struggling with the content or if you are failing, make sure that you keep on going back, reviewing the content. Make sure you keep on going back, asking yourself those questions, challenging yourself to really make sure you have a firm understanding. And if you are in that position where you are failing, make sure you also speak with your teacher and make sure you can do whatever you need to kind of get out of that. So that is a little bit of stuff I want to talk with you guys about tonight. So thank you so much, Chiku and John and Bubbly and Ian, for joining in. And how do you take AP classes? I'm not sure. Yeah, ask your counselor would be a great start. Depends on obviously the course and what, or not the course. Yeah, depends on the course and what your school or district obviously provides. I'm gonna stop taking, but didn't. Does school restrict or restrain children's lives? I can't remember all the missed opportunities I could have taken, but didn't. I'm not. Does school restrict children's lives? I'm not really sure. I've lost all motivation. Yeah, I know. I totally get it. It's that is, one of the things I'm going to cover in my live stream tonight. One of the questions was, a student talking about like lost motivation, and I get it. Like, crap, I wish I had like some initial thing I could just tell you and be like, yes, this is exactly what you need to do. But holy crap. I'd have some thoughts to, this student's response to their question about like motivation. But yeah, it's hard. I don't think there is an easy way to like answer that question as far as getting yourself ready and prepared and amped for like succeeding in a year like this, where just so many variables and so many changes have kind of happened so fast. It's a lot to digest. It really is. And so I'll try to do my best. I'll add some things, as some things that I can relate to as from the past, in normal circumstances. But I'm not sure if, to be honest with you, I'm not sure if that's going to be fully relatable for everybody, and to do. So that is, but it's a big issue, with motivation and, just trying to, do the best you can do to understand and learn in the way that things have been taught, especially math, or something where that conversation and investigation and doing things, or we're so used to being, working closely with people doing that. And if we're restricted to online teaching only, or, in my class, we're in rows and we just don't have a lot of interaction with each other. It's difficult stuff for sure. Neil said, do you teach college algebra? I do not teach college algebra. I'm teaching Algebra 2 honors, this year. And I did a couple courses. I've taught a couple courses like Math for College Readiness and some other things at the high school curriculum, where we did a lot of crossover with the college algebra class, not, exactly the case, but a lot of similar problems or, type of concepts that will go from there. Chris, online is terrible for learning. Yeah, I can definitely agree. For somebody that knows that the future of learning is online, or at least wanted to predict that's the direction, it's never going to be 100% that's the way we're going to learn, right? And so I think this push as far as everybody has to learn online and that's how it's doing it now, it was never going to work out, but slowly but surely, more and more things are going to be incorporated with online learning. And I think there's always going to be a human interaction part of the learning experience, especially for the lower grades. But even in the high school and the college level, that human experience is definitely always going to play a big part. But I think there's also a lot of portions of the online learning that we can take away from this experience and build upon and improve, because obviously for efficiency and cost, we can get a lot from this. And I think it also is very helpful, as far as, to learn from people all over the world, right? I mean, there's not just people inside of where I live, for instance, Hemath, well, thank you so much for your super chats. Or I'm from India, big fan. The fact that I can even have a conversation with you or help you with your math, across the world is absolutely amazing. And I think that's one of the cool things about technology and online learning. And no, it's never going to be perfect, but I think there is a lot of great benefit from there. And again, Hera, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. How would you deal with a teacher who is unreceptive? Please help. There's a couple things that I don't know. I think you got to find somebody that you can, get with. Not every teacher you're going to have that perfect relationship with. And that's just human beings, right? Even though we want everything to be perfect, we want the teacher that's always going to motivate us, that always is going to teach us the content perfectly, the way we understand it. Just humans are humans, and we're never going to always have that perfect experience. So I think when you have something where you don't have that great connection with your teacher, if they're unresponsive, whatever, find another teacher or another students that you can kind of channel through. And, because in the end, that's, hopefully your whole math experience is not going to be that way. But I think that, besides having a conversation and making sure that you're reaching out to the teacher, I think a lot of times teachers are misunderstood. And I have no idea of your circumstance. So I'm not sure how many times you've spoken to your teacher or why that is coming about. The teacher is unresponsive or not, working with you. But I can definitely say there's a lot of times, when I'm speaking with students or their parents, they take something I say inside the classroom as they misconstrued it completely and not really understanding what I mean. And, so I think just having a good, honest conversation with them or speaking with them about your issues and your troubles is always a good thing. And if that doesn't take you anywhere, then yeah, just look for different channels that's going to make you be able to get by. And hopefully, the good thing right now is that is just maybe a year or semester, and then you can just reset and hope, make a change. So hopefully that might be able to help. Because well, John, I'm just laughing, John, because I haven't touched my homework since September, which just made me laugh. It's funny. Like, yeah, I think, it's kind of funny. Like I know a lot of students are struggling with, getting through the content, and, I want students to be successful, and I want students to want to do their best. And I want students to, learn. And yeah, I mean, there's actually a little bit of truth to what you said. Like, I think when students, when they show a general interest in my course, not so much just in my course, but just doing well, not to like getting a good grade, but like of actually understanding what we're doing and trying to do the work that, I'm requiring. And if they don't understand something, like asking for help, like, teachers are responsive to that. They want to help you out. More or less, that is what teachers are there for. Most teachers are not just grumpy and just want to collect a paycheck and don't care, about you. They want to help you learn. They want to help you be successful. And I know that's not going to cover every single teacher, but yeah, I think, there's a little bit of truth in that, like doing just some of the basics and just showing that you have interest and you're putting in the work. I'm not sure the teacher might hate you, but yeah, you can definitely probably see like, they might not reciprocate some of their effort to you when they see that you're not putting in some of your effort. So always something a little think about, a little human, psychology going on there. Well, and thank you very much, guys. And I do appreciate it. I saw a whole bunch of happy birthdays for you guys. Thank you so much for that. It was very appreciative. I know I got once I got the thing, I just got like happy birthday after happy birthday. It was very nice. Well, thank you so much, guys. Yes, I see all of you in there with the happy birthdays. I very, very much appreciate it. All right. How not to fail, please. That should not be teachers. Yeah. J.A. Johnson, there couldn't be any better words to say that. I totally agree. That is definitely some people that need to get out of the profession ASAP, or should have get out of profession like 10 years ago. And then there's some amazing people that are not teachers that could make amazing impacts on students. And I think you're 100% correct. There's every single time I, cross paths with people that, they might just not have a teaching degree, but like they could still impact students in a somewhat kind of a teaching, component, but, portion where they could still even help students and mentor them and everything like that. And they would have an enormous impact on students' lives. Are your students actually failing? Yes, Jordan, if you go back and watch the stream, yeah, there's definitely students that, fail. I think everybody, like, some people always, kind of wonder like, well, you provide you so many like examples and you go over stuff. And like, yeah, like I did a live stream with them on Wednesday before their test. Like I did the review. It took like an hour. We went over that. I have like ton of examples, but again, like, just going over examples and just showing students work, that's not going to make people understand something. One thing I mentioned, like, students are failing for a couple of reasons. One is, I know some students didn't put in the work that I asked them to do. I know two, that's the stuff that we were learning was very difficult for this course, and they just need to see it more. They need more time for it to digest into their brain. That's not their fault. That's just reality. And so we're going to get there. I'm going to keep on spiraling review with them, and I'm going to keep on asking them to keep on working through those problems. And I know they'll get through it. But yeah, in the meantime, their grades are kind of being impacted. Some of them, not everybody. I mean, there's people that got A's on their tests and quizzes. So, but in general, if you look at like the overall grades, it's not a clickbait title or anything. There was a lot of students that are failing now that weren't failing before. All right. What time is it? 9:25. Okay. I got to get into some math, guys. Otherwise it's going to be too late. So thank you so much, guys, again for, joining in on the stream. I'm going to go through some of the math questions. I do have a couple open spots. So if you do have a math question that you'd like to add, feel free to do it. Just remember each and every week that I do these open Q&As. And you can go ahead and submit your questions in the Google form in the description. And then if I do not get your question, or if you want something that's a little bit more, or if you want help that's going to be a little bit quicker, then you can definitely go into my Discord server and go ahead and submit a question there. And I always ask guys, if you're submitting questions, getting help, always make sure you're trying to help somebody. Like we have channels from Algebra 1 all the way up to Calculus and above. Like, there's always people below you that you can help. So always look to submit a question and try to see if you guys can help a question. Banana sandwiches, can you help me with the Knickers equation? I'm not really sure, but if you go ahead and submit it in there, I will go ahead and take a look. Thank you so much for the super chat. I'm not familiar with the Knickers equation, so I'd have to go ahead and take a look at what you're referring to. But a lot of times, guys, I'm not able to get to all the questions that are submitted to me. That's why I do a lot of times let you guys know about the Discord server, where you guys can interact with other students that are learning math, helping each other out with those mathematical questions, and yeah, just to get a better understanding of the math that you guys are doing, because I'm not going to be able to get to everything with you guys, but I'll always try to do my best. All right, so can you answer that quick? What school do you teach? I teach at Mandarin in Jacksonville. Yes, that's okay. Try again. All right. Because again, yeah, I just teach at Mandarin High School in Jacksonville. I'm just a Google search away, really. Okay, so why would you do that? But it's the only course that I passed in college exam. Made it up. But that is the only course I passed. Okay. All right. So let's go get into this. So what is the length of a line segment whose endpoints are -4, 6, and 6, 3? Now, this is actually going to play into another question I had as far as for Jake. So let's go ahead and plot this. And we were talking about this in my pre-calculus. We were going over this. So if you want to find the length of a segment, right, we can plot the points, right? So let's just go and plot these points here. Yeah, we'll go for that. We don't need this. All right, so we'll go -4, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we're going to do that. That's F. And then we have G, which is 6, 13. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, what was it? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay. So you might say, all right, well, how does graphing go in helping you out? Well, you can see here, this is going to be a direct line. Now, many students do not remember the distance formula. They don't it's, when you look at the distance formula, you're like, whoa, that's a lot to memorize, so I'm just not going to remember it. And I'm like, fine. So one thing is, we know like on an XY axis, right? We have a horizontal distance and a vertical distance. So the change in our horizontal distance from F to G here is going to be like, we can just count this, right? That's the nice thing about graphing. We can count this, or hopefully you can just kind of recognize that's going to be 10. Now, how would we algebraically say from -4 to 6 is going to be 10? Well, the way that we could represent that would be like subtracting, 6 minus a -4, right? That's going to be the difference here, because this point here is G, which is 6, 13, and F, which is -4, 6, right? If we just took 6 and we found the difference between 6 and -4, that would be 10. And then our vertical distance, if we were going to find the vertical distance here, again, we just find the difference to do 13 minus 6 here, and we would get 7. Now, if we have a horizontal distance and this vertical distance, hopefully you guys recognize that that's going to create a right triangle. And therefore, we can just use the distance. We can just use the Pythagorean Theorem here to find our D. So again, we have D squared equals 7 squared plus 10 squared. So D equals the square root of 49 plus 100. And so that's going to be 149, which I didn't bring my calculator. I'm going to assume it's going to be 12.21, which it is. Okay. Now, what are some other ways we could think about this? Well, another way that a lot of times that we look at this as far as the distance formula is we can call this our x1 and x2. Sorry, x1, geez. We can call this x1 and y1, and we can call this point x2, y2. So of course, if any of you are familiar or want me to go over the distance formula again, then we could just rewrite that as x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared. And again, you can see like that how that relates to our distance formula. Because again, all this was our vertical change and our horizontal change, right? Squared, quantity squared equals my distance quantity squared. So that again is the way to define the distance formula, which you can see our answer is B. All right, question number 2. The student was asking like how to write this in slope-intercept form. So when you're writing in slope-intercept form, what we're trying to do is we're trying to isolate the y. So y equals mx plus b. All right. So when you have a linear equation in standard form, you basically need to just isolate the y. So first thing we're going to want to do is get the 12x to the other side. Now these are not like terms, so you cannot subtract them. Right? And then instead of rewriting them as a 12 minus 12x, we want to write this like mx in front of the b. So I'm just going to rearrange this. I don't really like working horizontally, but I'm going to have to here. So minus a 12, oops. So negative 4y equals a negative 12x minus 12. And now you can see my y is being multiplied by negative 4, so I'll divide by negative 4. Just make sure you're dividing this whole expression, negative 12x minus 12 by 4. So I'm going to get y equals a negative divided by negative is going to be a positive, and that's going to be plus 3. Okay, so this is important. The thing that's nice about having slope-intercept form is my slope, also represented as m, is equal to 3, and my y-intercept, also represented as b, is going to equal 3. So y equals 3. And then if we needed to graph the equation, we could just kind of plot the y-intercept, and then use the slope to get to the next point. All right, question number 3. Yeah, it's been a while since I kind of did the Pythagorean Theorem like from the basic. So students asking like, I'm confused to comprehend, I'm confused about how to find the answer from a triangle. So, rather than going through like the theorem of, breaking up the, why it works and kind of stuff like that, hopefully this kind of like understood this concept of, the Pythagorean theorem is just providing you, we can call it c squared if you want to, a squared and b squared, which most students like kind of have this memorized, right? The, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The other way that I really like to, memorize this or understand this is really like when you have a triangle or a right triangle, that it's your leg squared plus your leg squared equals your hypotenuse squared. And the reason why I like this equation better than a plus b plus c is because not every time is a plus a, b, and c going to be used, right? Or, do you know which one is a, b, and c? Like for this case, I called the hypotenuse d because it represented the distance, and that's what I was looking for. It wouldn't make, this 10 and 7 were like my horizontal, my vertical change distances. So it just didn't really make sense for them in regarding to comparing them to the other two portions of the triangle. So hopefully that kind of helps, and as far as this explanation as well. All right, question number 4. I had to drop my pre-calculus class twice, so I'm really trash at math, and I need to know where to start up and build up my pre-calculus in order to complete my degree plan. Yeah, so if you are struggling with pre-calculus, and this is what I kind of talked about, why a lot of students take my class, then maybe they struggle or they drop out. You got to go back to the basics, right? You probably did learn the algebra 1, algebra 2, concepts, but you didn't really like dig deep on that stuff. You didn't really fully understand what you're doing or challenge yourself. And I think that's the other thing, like students you can understand something, in algebra 1 and algebra 2, or even in pre-calculus. But if you don't put yourself in that framework to challenge yourself to understand what's going on, when you do get challenged, a lot of times you are not prepared for it. And it becomes like too much for you to kind of overcome. And I have no idea if that's what you are, if that's your circumstance or if that's something, but I would definitely go back to algebra 1, algebra 2, and just don't like review math problems and like do those, but like challenge yourself. Make sure that you like have a full and complete understanding of all those concepts. And because I guarantee you can make algebra 1 and algebra 2 very, very difficult on you. Even if you are in pre-calculus, even if you're in, calculus, we have all the time students have getting to calculus. And I mean, they can't answer some questions that students are doing in algebra 1, algebra 2, right? I mean, these students already got by with that stuff, But, they didn't really fully understand what they were doing. And they did what they needed to do to get to the test, to pass the course, which, hey, all right, it happens all the time, right? But if you understand that you are going to be required, especially for your degree plan, like you need to know this stuff, right? And this is the one thing that when I decided to become a math teacher, like it wasn't good enough just to be like, hey, I can pass this class. No, I need to fully understand why everything was working, because eventually I'm going to be explaining this stuff to other people. You just can't get a good grade and like move on. So I'd go back to Algebra 1, Algebra 2 and challenge yourself. Look at the hardest problems you can find in those books that you have, or from your previous coursework, and really really challenge yourself to really understand that content. And I guarantee you, if you do that, the next time you go back through pre-calculus, you're going to be like, oh, wow, everything's making sense now. Because I took pre-calculus twice. I took it once in high school and I took it once in college. And in the high school, I was not prepared for pre-calculus. I could do enough to get by, which I did. I got by, but I didn't know what I was doing. And once I had college, I had to go back to take a little bit more fundamental math course, really understood what I was doing. And by the time I took pre-calculus the second time, it was a breeze. Like it was, I did very, very well in it. I think I got a D in high school and then an A in college. And it wasn't that it was easier. It was just I was better prepared for it. I made myself better prepared for it. And I was more mature. I was older. So, all right. So, So I did open up a little extra math question. If you guys do have anything in here for open question, if you guys have anything, Merkins, can you teach all of calculus course? I wish so. We'll plan on this summer. I'm definitely gonna go back through my calculus curriculum stuff and get going through that. So I'd like to definitely kind of get myself back into calculus, because a lot of the questions you guys submit are a lot with calculus, a lot with statistics, and just stuff that I'm not teaching in the current moment. I want to definitely improve things. So, hey, Addie, good to have you back on. Either type of math question? Yes, Addie, you got it. Awesome. Thank you so much. Here's the equation. Solve for x. All right, Zypic. I'll go ahead and do that one for you. Thank you for submitting your question. Log base 5. I'm believing I have this right. 18 minus log base 5 of x equals log base 5 of 7. Integration by substitution is my final straw. Yes. Now we're getting into, at least for the calculus people, now you guys are getting into the busy season, right? Now it's all, at least for the high school, going into the AP calculus. Now things just I feel like a whirlwind of like just digesting so much information and practicing for your AP exam. So wish you guys all the best. I know it is a lot of taxing stuff for you to be, thinking about right now. So, all right, so let's go and take a look at this, this logarithmic equation that was submitted. And a couple things to look at when you're solving for logs is we either want to use the one-to-one property, or we want to be able to convert this to an exponential equation, which is typically when we're dealing with logs, a lot of times having them converted to an exponential is going to allow us to be able to solve them, but not always the case. So the first thing I'm going to do, though, is I want to condense my logarithmic expression. And by using the quotient rule, I can rewrite this as the log of x minus 18 all over x equals log base 5 of 7. Now, using the one-to-one property, I can just rewrite this as a x minus 18 over x equals 7, right? So the log base of 5 equals to log base of 5. Then we just have our arguments are going to be equal to each other. And now to solve for x, I'm going to need to get the x off the denominator. So I'll multiply by an x on both sides. Let's see here what we get. I get x minus 18 equals 7x. Subtract x, negative 18 equals a 6x. Divide by 6. X is going to equal a negative 3. But again, we have to make sure we go back through and make sure this question makes sense. And it doesn't look like it's going to make sense, because when you're thinking about an exponential equation like 5, so let's just kind of look at this example. So log base 5 of -3, right? And let's just call this, I don't know, a, right? So this says 5 raised to what number equals -3? So just think about this. If you take the number 5 or any number and raise it to a power, are you ever going to make it negative? And the answer is no. Like, that's impossible through our real number system, that I can have a number a that's going to make this equal to a negative number, even if it was -5, right? Because it doesn't, if a is positive, right, or negative, it doesn't make this answer, right? Negative just makes it the reciprocal, right? And if a is a fraction, then you're going to be dealing with, your radicals. So this is never going to work. So therefore, this is a no solution. So just make sure when you're solving your logarithmic equations that you check your answers when you solve them. So hopefully that helps out. I don't know why my chat stopped. Go through. All right. A good completing the square problem. We haven't done completing the square. A lot of times, maybe that's like a beginning of the year type of thing. I feel like at the beginning of the year, completing the square was just I was doing completing the square like every single week. But all right, I'm going to do this the old way that I have taught this. And so one way you can do this is just to factor out a 4, because whenever we want to complete the square, we want to make sure our x squared is divided by 2. So it'd be 3 divided by 4, x, and then plus 5. Okay. Then to complete the square, again, I'm not going to do the full understanding of this. We're just going to do b divided by 2, and that is going to be your value c. So if I did 3/4 divided by 2, quantity squared. Well, dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/2, right? So that's going to be 3/8 squared, which is a 9/64. So 4 times x squared plus 3/4 x plus a 9. No, something's wrong. 9. Oh, yeah. 9/64. Now, again, if you're going to add 9/64, you have to subtract a 9/64. But again, notice we didn't really add a 9/64, did we? We added a 9/64 that got multiplied by 4. So I need to subtract a 9/64 that's going to be multiplied by 4. And then we need to add 5. Okay, so now we need to break this down. Now, the nice thing about completing the square when you're dealing with something that's like kind of crazy like this, my expression here is going to be x plus or minus b divided by 2 quantity squared. So if my middle term's positive, I'll use positive. If my middle term's negative, I'll be the negative. So in this case, I can rewrite this as a x plus, what was my b divided by 2? Well, if I took b divided by 2, I got 3/8, right? So it's going to be 3/8. And again, like, make sure that makes sense. Is 3/8 times 3/8 9/64? It is. Is 3/8 plus 3/8 3/4? Well, that's going to be 6/8, which reduces down to 3/4. Then we just have this nice little fraction. So 32, so this would be 9/16, right? So you could divide a 4, 32, 48/16. So yeah, so this would be a 9/16 plus 5. I could rewrite that as a 16/16. So that's going to be what, 50/80? So it's going to be 9/16 plus a 80/16. And I apologize, guys, if I'm getting my math wrong. So you're subtracting that. Dang it. So that's going to be a negative 9/16. So that'd be a 71/16. Sorry, guys, doing my math. It's been a while. Negative 71/16, which I don't think is going to be simplified. Wait a minute. How did I get to that big? I divide a 4 on the top and the bottom. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and then plus the 5. Okay, yeah, and then plus 5. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, sorry, Anik. I'm just going through the questions that are submitted. And again, this is let's do the hardest problems we can possibly do questions. These are questions that people are having trouble with. So, or they asked me to go and solve. So that is why I am doing them. But yes, there's, and one thing actually to even add onto that too, is, my brain hurts a lot of the times at these nights. So, I have done some, other problems. Well, again, like the same thing too, is like, I enjoy like a good math question. Like a lot of people give me these like very difficult math questions. And again, I'm not a math genius, right? But I think it's also fair. Like, I also want to make sure I can do problems that when I only have so much time to prepare for each one of these questions, which is very, very limited. So if I don't know what students are asking, or I don't know where they're having help, or I don't even know what the question is, I have to move on from there, because I want to make sure that when I do these live streams, I can go through as many questions as possible, help you out for those you've submitted, and then also be beneficial for those of you that are around, because I've definitely on my older streams got questions, had to think through them, took 5 minutes of talking through the problem, and it's just, that's not beneficial for people, right? So I think it's definitely helpful that I want to make sure you guys are going to get the most out of this as possible, even if it might be something that might not be a challenge for you as well. But hey, it's definitely a good idea to go through some, get another live stream, more challenged questions. All right. This student was asking for Z. They had trouble because Z was on the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side, which the best news is it doesn't matter. So again, what we want to do is identify what is happening to our value Z. And sometimes what I used to do when I first teach, I would say circle it and say pin it. So what that means is just don't move it. You're going to keep Z right there. Now we just need to say, well, what is happening to my Z? It's being multiplied by -1/2 and it's being added by 9, right? Because you could rewrite this as a -1/2 Z plus 9, right? You could rewrite it just like that. And a lot of times students like it in that form, so therefore they can see, oh yeah, it's being added by 9. But again, you don't need to. You can just leave right there. So you subtract a 9 and you get 6 equals a -1/2 Z. And then how do you undo multiplying by -1/2? Well, you could divide by -1/2 on both sides, which is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal, which is -2/1 or just -2. So therefore you have -12 equals Z. And then you could just flip that around again and say Z equals -12. All right. I can't remember. I don't think the student gave me who they were, what they have, but they felt like they were having trouble. They were getting bored in class, and they really were happy for my videos, which I was very thankful and happy to be. But they're having trouble with their dilemma. Like they're just not engaged with the math. And I think they were pretty much very successful in math prior. But then they just were not connecting this year when they moved to a new school. And I think a lot of students can probably relate to that, with the way school is. Like, I was telling some people, some friends this weekend that, teaching's just not the same either. I mean, everybody's wearing masks. I crack jokes all the time, and students can't tell my jokes because they don't see my, they don't see my mouth, move and like my mannerisms, or not my mannerism, but, they can't see how they can't see my smile and everything that's going on. And I'm like, yeah, it's difficult. It's just very sterile, inside of the classroom. And so, I try to do my best. And, a lot of times even my best is not good enough, but, it's difficult. And I think it's difficult for students that, are engaged with math or have enjoyed math. And then also, difficult for people that didn't like math to begin with, or they really struggle making that connection, or, having a teacher that doesn't seem maybe passionate about math or teaching with them. And how do you give yourself that motivation to be engaged and to understand the material? It's a very difficult thing. And, I mentioned at the beginning of this live stream, I don't know if I have a great response, or I don't know if I have a good, answer for this, but, I think a couple things is, one thing that kind of reminds me of my only the only thing I could relate to is something that was during normal times, but hopefully it's a little bit relatable, is when I was taking physics. And I thought I wanted to take physics, so I was like, oh, well, I'm going to be a math major. Why don't I just do a physics minor? Obviously, physics and math are very much connected. I took physics in high school. I kind of liked it. So of course, it'll be a natural fit. And I absolutely hated it. I just was not passionate about physics at all. I really, really enjoyed pure mathematics and learning about mathematical formulas and proofs and understanding this wide world of mathematics. And the applied math and physics, I didn't care for at all. I was just bored the heck out of me. I literally could, I just would wake up, wanted to avoid going to class. I did not like the course at all. And also I just wasn't very good at it either. Like it didn't connect with me, as well. Where I'd pick up things in math class a lot easier for physics. It just, a lot of times just seemed like I was missing some things that maybe I learned that I was supposed to learn in high school that I never actually truly learned, that I was supposed to. And yeah, but it was one of those things I was like, all right, well, I got to get through the course. I think it's going to be beneficial for me, even when becoming a math teacher, to have this background of physics, and so yeah, I mean, I just had to push my way through it. And I think one of those things is like, with this year, hopefully, this is something that's not going to have too much of a long lasting impact on a lot of our education. And what I mean by that in terms of like how things are right now is going to be how exactly they're going to be next semester. Like obviously there's going to be a lot of things that are never going to go back, have been changed forever. But I don't think the exact situation that we're in now is going to be exactly a replica for next year. At least I hope. I mean, I have no idea, but I think that, one thing you can kind of hold through is like, yeah, not everything that you're going to be doing is the most enjoyable. And I think there's some things that you gotta do enough to get by. And, it's, sometimes sometimes you're not going to connect with those teachers. Sometimes you're going to struggle in classes and you just got to push through, a lot of times when things are easy, we like it. And then when things get tough, we really struggle because we're just not used to it. And I think sometimes you got to, put in that extra effort. You got to do things that you're not used to, do things that you've never done before, and try to look for those extra sparks or extra ways to, make things more enjoyable. And if it's not, that's okay. Do what you need to do to move on. And then you can rehuddle back and reassess and readjust. So hopefully that was a little better. I don't feel like I have a perfect response, for this or advice or even to be in the position to provide that, but hopefully at least that was somewhat helpful. Yeah, well, awesome. In fact, like go for it. I don't know what it is. It wasn't like I hated physics. Well, actually it was. Yeah. I don't know. There's something about it. When people say like, oh, make math like more real life. And I'm like, no, I am a pure math person, like through and through. Like I just love the abstract mathematics. Like to me, like doing the whole real life and making connections to a real world. It's like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And there was a lot of part. It's actually, I will say, like when I first learned calculus, like that is what my first connection. The first thing I really liked about the math and calculus was learning how so much of it was applied. But once I kind of got past, calculus and kind of got over that little making those connections, after that, I was like, I'm not really as intrigued anymore about that. I like just kind of seeing the, how math was more connected within, with each other rather than, how it's being applied in the real world. I don't know. All right. Is there a constant process you're having trouble or binomial expansion of Pascal's triangle? I don't know why I picked this question this fast in. All right. So, I mean, I guess a couple things to kind of remember. If you have x plus, I'll just do it because x plus y to the 10th. I'm not going to go through like the binomial theorem. I'm going to kind of go through the way that I teach it with my students. One thing I want you to understand, like if you were to expand this, right? The binomial theorem is you can start with x to the 10th and then y to the 0. And this pattern of x to the 9th, y to the 1st, plus x to the 8th times y squared, plus, and this pattern of this first term starting at your power going in descending order and your second term starting at 0 and going in ascending order is going to keep on going all the way till you get to x to the 0, y to the 10th. Now, the only other portion that we need to include is going to be that Pascal's triangle. And Pascal's triangle, which again, I wish I kind of had more time to kind of talk about this, is going to be those kind of scalars of each of these terms. And because when you expand a binomial, you're going to have common terms. And those common terms is where we get these 2 and 3s going from. So the third term is going to be like your x plus y to the third power, right? And what you do to keep on getting to the next row is you can just add these terms to get to the next row. So you always start and end with 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 plus 1 is 4, and 1. And I'm not really sure what else the student needed for this. That's why I don't really like a lot of these questions where I really don't know what to help them with. I'm just kind of like vaguely talking about the binomial expression and Pascal's triangle. So just keep an eye out, like when you are submitting questions, to make sure that it's very detailed on like where you're having trouble and like what, or like for what question. Therefore, it just kind of helps me kind of provide you more value, because, you know, maybe this is valuable, maybe it wasn't, I don't know. But usually a lot of times I'll just move past questions like this just because I don't know what to really what to help them. You know, I mean, obviously I teach this I would teach this in like a whole day. So I mean, I have a lot to talk about, but I don't just want to randomly talk for an hour about Pascal's triangle and a binomial expansion. I want to give you, you know, a quick hit of understanding. All right, so I think this one was to solve for u, right? So a couple things. When you have a problem like this, all right, when you have u on the denominator, you have to get u off the denominator. Now, when we have multiple fractions or multiple denominators, what we're going to want to do is eliminate those, right? Nobody likes fractions. Nobody likes variables in the denominator. So let's get them off the denominator. So to do that, we're going to multiply by the LCD. Now, the LCD in this case is going to be a 3xu, right? Because the denominators do not have anything in common. They don't have any factors in common, right? So therefore, we can just multiply them 3xu. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 3xu times each one of these. Now, since I have the time, I'm going to multiply each of these 3xu times 1 over x equals a 3xu times 1 over u plus a 3xu times 1/3. Okay, now again, why is multiplying by the LCD so important? Because what happens is, look at the denominators. Look what happens. Right? So therefore, I'm just left with this 3u equals 3x plus xu. Now, here's the problem. We still have two u's. Now we got the u's off the denominator, but now we got to get them, now we got to isolate them. And so if we get them to the same side, what we're going to obtain here, sorry, I'm going to have to do the work over here, is a 3u minus xu. 3u minus xu equals 3x. Okay? And from here, what we can do is we can't combine these. They're not like terms. So what we can do, though, to get 1u is to factor out a u. By doing that, I get a u. Factor out the u, I get a 3 minus x equals a 3x. Then, to solve for u, I can just divide by 3 minus x. So therefore, u equals a 3x divided by 3 minus x. And voila. Quiz through Discord. Anik, what are you talking about? Hey, what do you think about a quiz through Discord? I'm not sure if you're asking me, but I'm just kind of curious about quizzes. Like, yes, I like quizzes. I'm not sure if you responded to quiz. Oh, quiz. But yeah, I'd like to be able to do some extra quizzes. I'm not sure what you're referring to as quizzes on Discord. I just saw your picture there. All right, Layla being wondering, should I skip Algebra 2 trig next year and move straight to pre-calc, or take it slow, step by step? By the way, I'm in Algebra 2 right now as an 11th grade student. Please give me advice. So I don't think you've been on the live stream the whole time. I don't know who you are, but one of the things that I've had trouble with students failing right now is because they don't have a good, solid understanding of the material they need to for pre-calculus. And so my advice to you is basically kind of like, how you feel on this. I mean, if you feel like you have a good understanding of Algebra 2, and we don't have an Algebra 2 trig before pre-calculus, our students go from Algebra 2 to trig. So I'm not, or Algebra 2 to pre-calculus. So I'm not sure what a course in between really does, or how that kind of works for your school. But yeah, I think it's very important to have a solid foundation. And I don't think, There's a couple things for this. One thing, students mostly struggle in math courses because they lack a foundation of the skills. And it's not that, and please don't, misconstrue like grades with understanding. Students can get great grades and still not understand what they are doing, right? I think we all kind of know, like, there's a lot of tests and quizzes that we might have passed, right? But then like a week later or a semester later, we're like, I don't remember anything that I did, right? I mean, you crammed or did whatever else you needed to do. And then that was like it, right? So yeah, just, I would look into your understanding of the content, going from there, and how you feel kind of from there. And then all the other things to take into consideration, there's no rush. There's no rush in mathematics. You don't have, if you're an 11th student here look at what you're trying to achieve, and if you need to take the next course by next year, then all right, maybe, challenge yourself, maybe, go for it, go straight to pre-calculus. But if there's not a dire need and you feel like more comfortable, going at a slower pace, I would recommend doing it. I see more issues with people trying to do math quicker and go to the next level before they're ready than students that are not being pushed because they're taking it slower, right? I see way more students struggle because they're trying to do math too fast and they're trying to compete with everybody and go to the next level, and they're not ready for it and they're not prepared, compared to students that are like, hey, I'm just going at my pace, and I'm not challenging myself. Like, very, very few people are in that boat. So my general recommendation, without knowing anything about you and your course, would be like, just take it slow. There's no rush, I mean, I know you might, you'll get like, I didn't take calculus until I was in college. People are like, oh, you got to take calculus like sophomore year. I'm like, what? No, you're fine. Like, give yourself time. Don't overstress yourself and rush through things. You'll be okay. Math is not a race. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. But again, there are a lot of other things that I'd take into consideration making that decision. All right. Question number 12. So evaluate the function. I think the students did the work, but they got it wrong. So let's go ahead and plug this in. So again, this is your input, right? And this is your rule. So wherever you have your input variable, which is going to be x, right? Because this is like h of x, you're going to replace that with a -1. So what we have here is a -1 cubed, right? Because it's the variable cubed, right? If it was -x cubed, then they'd put the -x inside parentheses. But this is the -1 cubed, then plus 2 times -1 squared minus 3 times -1 plus 4. And so we have a -1 cubed, so that's a negative times negative times a negative, which is going to be a negative, right? Anytime you have a negative raised to an odd power, it is negative. So a negative times a negative is going to be a +1. A -1 squared is a positive, right? Any negative raised to an even power is going to be positive. So that's a +1 times 2, which is +2. And then -1 times 3 is going to be a +3 plus 4. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 is going to be 10. And voila, there you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that is it for this week's open live Q&A. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in. I do appreciate our time. For tonight, I did not do a member stream this week, so I do apologize for any of you guys that might have joined in from the YouTube memberships. Thank you so much for, again, those supporting this open stream, and I will have some extra bonus content for you members coming up this week, so I will let you guys know about that. I'm very excited to let you know about that, but that's one of the things I've been preparing for, so that's why I do not have a bonus stream for you guys or a post live stream for you guys this week, but I do have something extra I think you will enjoy. So again, thank you so much for you members of the YouTube channel, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I'll take your questions in the chat, or go ahead and head into the Discord. Go ahead and post a question and help somebody out with a question. All right, guys, I hope you have a great night as well as week, and I will see you next week. Cheers.